All right, y'all. So we haven't even made it to the draft, and the Suns decided to kick off the offseason already. So Bradley Beal got traded to the Suns. Holy shit. It happened like an hour ago, so I just threw on the camera real quick, and let's talk about it. So Bradley Beal to the Suns for Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, several second-round picks, and some pick swaps. So I would like to talk about this from the Phoenix Suns standpoint and what this means for them and now and the era of the Phoenix Suns and all of that. I want to talk about it from the Wizards standpoint, and I want to talk about Chris Paul's standpoint just for like a couple minutes. So from the Suns standpoint, this is what I have to say about the trade. It's a great trade, maybe. It I get it considering the circumstances. There already wasn't a lot of depth there. There already wasn't a lot of everything there. But with the Suns now, you have now reached this point of you had the most successful period of your team from the moment you traded for Chris Paul. You go to the finals, and you got bounced in the second round and 7 games last in the year after, but you won the most games in the NBA in the regular season, and Monty Williams is your guy for the future, and Chris Paul helped bring this young Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, and Cam Johnson and other guys along, and DeAndre Ayton and Darius Saric was a good role player for you guys, and there was a lot of pieces there, and the Suns moved into what the NBA was for winning championship teams. It's been continuity. It's been aggregate ball handling. It's been having rim protection, and it's been having a group of guys that fit together. And they got rid of all that and said, let's trade for Kevin Durant. Let's trade for Bradley Beal. So, look, it's a similar big three that Kevin Durant had in Brooklyn. I think these pieces fit better than Kyrie and Harden did for a big three like this. If Devin Booker can sit in the corner and shoot threes, I think he can do that just fine. Bradley Beal can sit in the corner for some possessions and hit some threes. That will be fine. Kevin Durant obviously has no problem doing that. But who's the main ball handler on this team? I don't know. That's an issue. Every single championship team over the past 5 years has had a team that every single person knows their role to a T. The Suns aren't going to have that. The Suns now have a new head coach. Screw the continuity. Screw having a team that fits together. And screw having any amount of depth. I mean, with the new CBA, they have now capped themselves completely. So there are a lot of questions for this trade. I think in a vacuum, Bradley Beal for Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, and some second-round picks and some pick swaps is a great-ass trade. That's obviously a good trade in a vacuum. But I need to see what the DeAndre Ayton situation looks like for the Suns, whether he's going to play or whether he's not going to play for them, and what the rest of the roster looks like, and how Frank Vogel can apply the roster to actually winning games. So there's a lot of questions about this team, about where they're going, but it's going to be fun to watch. I'm glad Bradley Beal gets to play for a playoff and a championship contender team. I don't know if I've ever watched Bradley Beal on national television. I really don't, besides like that 2017 Celtics series. There's a lot of things I like about this trade. It's more fun for the Suns. It's more fun for the league. There's a lot of things I like. And having 3 guys like Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant is obviously amazing. You have to have this conversation every time a big 3 like this with Kevin Durant, Kyrie, and Harden, or this one. You have to preface it with, I know all these guys are super talented and awesome. I know that. We knew that with the Nets. But there's a reason teams like this don't work. There just is, and especially in today's NBA, it is a certain formula. We have moved past the get a bunch of talented guys era, right? Everybody in the league is talented. Everybody is. What everybody doesn't have is a team that fits perfectly together, that is coached well enough, that has had years of playoff losses that they want to get over, right? Scar tissue is a real fucking thing, man. The Nuggets had lost enough in the postseason. You need to have a group of guys, not just 2 or 3 guys, but a group of guys that have not only felt the losses enough, but also have the combination of depth and also have the combination of aggregate something, of aggregate ball handling or aggregate maybe defensive play that the Lakers had. You just need to have something other than elite offense in today's NBA. It needs to be a combination of 3 or 4 things. And I just don't know if the Suns have that. The Suns don't have elite rebounding. They don't have elite defense. They don't have elite playmaking. They have elite offensive scoring. We'll see. We'll see what happens. From the Wizards' standpoint, this trade in a vacuum, wow, there's so many places to start with this trade. I think it is malfeasance from a franchise to wait until you give Bradley Beal, who is a player he's not the level of player that can raise a trash squad to a championship level contender, and he can barely even raise them to a playoff level team. So they give that guy the keys to the city, a max contract, and a no-trade clause, which LeBron James, Giannis, Kawhi, Kevin Durant, Jokic, any of those guys, nobody has a no-trade in their contract besides Bradley Beal. They gave that guy that contract and waited a year until he was into the contract, then to trade him for nothing. And not only that, but waited until Victor Wembanyama's draft lottery was settled. That was the year that they were going to finally bottom out. That is a franchise malfeasance. This draft class is supposed to be legit. There are supposed to be 5 to 6 to 7 elite guys or borderline elite guys, whatever you want to call that. There's a lot of great draft prospects in the 2023 draft class. And from everything that I've read and everything that I can see, and all this shit doesn't mean bullshit, but the 2024 class is not supposed to be this overwhelmingly talented class. And it's ridiculous to already wait till he gets a year into his contract and the no-trade clause, so what you're getting back is not going to be anything good because he can just decline any deal. That already is going to put you behind the 8 ball, but to bottom out right after the year that maybe one of the best all-time players of all, the best players of all time gets drafted, number 1, I'd say maybe just try to give it a shot in the lottery for that year. Who am I, though? So good thing they waited a year on that to bottom out. And then, yeah, the Wizards are just in a weird spot. And look, I get it. New GM wanted clearly to just say, I understand what we've done in the past. Bradley Beal needs to get traded now. We need to bottom out now as soon as possible. And I agree. At this point, if you're not going to look at the past and you're just going to look at the future and say, what should they have done today on the 18th of June, trade Bradley Beal. That's a good decision, no matter what you get back for him. It's not about what you get back for Bradley Beal and the value of it all. It's about we need to put ourselves in a position to have cap flexibility and draft assets. That's what the Wizards need at this point. There is no sense in trying to make something out of this mediocre-ass roster. They should have blown it up 5 years ago, but they didn't, and they waited, and they waited, and they waited until they could finally get 0 trade assets back and miss on one of the greatest draft prospects of my entire life. So good thing they did that, and hopefully you get the best guy in the draft next year, or else this is all going to look really fucking stupid. So yeah, the Wizards are poverty. And for a moment, I would like to talk about Chris Paul, because I think a couple teams I would like to see him on. I would like to see him on the San Antonio Spurs. If he's not going to go the route of an instant championship contender that he wants to be on, which I would be surprised if he didn't. Going to the Spurs, I think, is the most fun option out of those couple. That is a fun option for him to go to. He can mentor Victor. He can show him how to be a pro. Chris Paul can be Tony Parker light, coached by Craig Popovich. Maybe that's something he has on his bucket list. I don't know. But I think that would be a fun place for him to go if you're not talking championship contenders. And tell me Chris Paul couldn't get 11 assists a game if Victor Wembanyama is on his team. How is that not an alley-oop every play? The Los Angeles Lakers, I think, actually would be a good fit. People were like, oh, but LeBron and Chris Paul both handle the ball, as if Chris Paul didn't play with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander on the Thunder and James Harden on the Rockets, and didn't just play with Devin Booker, a secondary ball handler, on the Suns, and with Kevin Durant as well for that little bit. So I don't. It's a weird criticism to be like there would be two ball handlers on the team, considering that half of teams Chris Paul has played for at this point in his career have been with other ball handlers. So that's a silly thing to say about the Lakers' potential. So I think he could be a lot more of an impact defender, considering that Anthony Davis is back there, so he can just funnel guys to the paint if he really needs to. But he can play basically as much press defense as he wants on the perimeter, and if guys get past him, there's AD to block him, so or to affect the shot. So I think the Lakers would be a fine fit offensively and defensively if the Lakers keep his minutes to a pretty low standard. I think the Thunder could maybe work if he's trying to just help the Thunder grow as a team. I would like to see him back there maybe. I think he could play a good sixth man or a starting position, but be a tertiary ball handler to Giddey and Shea. Maybe that would be interesting. I don't know. And then I think the Clippers would maybe be interesting, but I don't think that's a good fit. I think if he didn't look great offensively or defensively with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, how is that going to be any different with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George? I understand they're a little bit better defensively, so maybe that doesn't really affect him personally. In the offense, I don't know if that would look really any different. If James Harden goes to Houston, so Chris Paul signs with the Sixers to play with Joel, I think that would maybe be interesting, but there's a lot of questions I have with Philly too. So it kind of there's a lot of chips to fall here in this postseason or this offseason. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with James Harden to Houston. Maybe we'll see what happens with Philly. The Clippers could blow everything up, and I wouldn't be surprised. There are a lot of great questions I have heading into this offseason. The Wizards and the Suns certainly started us off on a pretty good note. So that is the end of the video. Boom. Kablam.